And we are live, everybody. Welcome to a very special Thanksgiving edition of the Café Hangout.
Yes, it is U.S. Thanksgiving, and here we are, two Canadians that are going about our business. But we are welcoming everybody to the post office celebration of Thanksgiving, where, we're going to be celebrating with our own post-wrestling Thanksgiving dinner on Thursday night.
I suppose so.
Yes.
Yeah, with Braden and Davey. We're going to Korean barbecue not long after this. So
What better way to spend Thanksgiving? So whether you are one of our viewers / listeners in the U.S., we hope you're enjoying your day. For those around the world, everybody welcome. We are going to be taking your phone calls throughout the show and lots to discuss, and it'll be open topics on the phone line. So if you want to give us a call, we will be taking your calls, 732-800-4423, or you can Skype in by searching Post Wrestling. Free to call in on Skype, and we'll be taking calls as long as they're coming in.
very exciting because we're actually debuting a brand new look right here on the Post Wrestling Cafe.
Look at this.
Hopefully all these graphics that you're seeing right now, if you're watching us on YouTube, work out.
I'm in a box. Look at this. Wow.
We've got even a chat room on the side, so anybody typing into the chat room is displayed right in our video, which could be a terrible idea. At some point. So we'll test this out to see how it works.
I hope we have
out.
a safe bunch out there.
I hope so too. I'm trusting all of you guys, please. But yeah, brand new look. Our phone numbers are right there, so I don't even have to read these things out anymore. So
and then I'm deleting this off my desktop.
yeah, very exciting. So do call in right now. I'm gonna start up Skype at the moment, and we'll be taking phone calls all show.
Yes. I've learned the lesson about making sure I'm logged out of Skype on my phone, so that during off hours, as in every hour but one during the week, that we are not taking calls, that my phone isn't ringing as I'm at the grocery store.
I certainly appreciate, I think, the enthusiasm, but like we were getting calls like an hour before this, even before we were going live at all. Like in the middle, while I was sitting on my couch watching NXT, I'm like getting these phone calls.
Wait, I'll get calls like later into the day on Thursday. I don't know if people realize that we're on. I think we're consistently on for an hour and a half every week, but nonetheless, we love you all.
We'll do a 24-hour.
I will not be answering because then you get grumpy, Pollock, if I was answering. But it's like I'm listening to a podcast, I'm listening to music, and it stops because you're calling. So there.
Let's go to our first phone call.
Ooh, let's start off.
Very eager first patron of the cafe. Caller, you're on with us. What's on your mind?
Hey guys, it's Tim from Ohio again. I think I started off last week too.
Wow, Tim, you're right at the front of the line. Happy Thanksgiving. What is your Thanksgiving consisting of beyond? Are you with your entire family all gathered around watching the Café Hangout? Because that to me sounds like the best way to celebrate.
Sadly, no. In fact, every year for Thanksgiving, I am grateful and thankful that my mother tolerated my wrestling habit. I'll never forget. In fact, I never thought about this, but this is a funny story. You want to talk about ingenuitive local promoters.
Okay.
My mother just knew wrestling. Like I would spout off these letters and these names, but she just knew wrestling. So when WWF would come to town, a local promoter named Preston Steele, Pete Lusick, promoted the local IWA promotion. And he would schedule his shows within a day of the WWF shows. Right. So my mom would go, hey, I got you those tickets for wrestling. It's at the Metroplex.
Wow.
Metroplex is 5 minutes from where WWF are in the Beagley Center. She didn't know.
Right. Sorry, I just want to ask if you wouldn't mind just logging out of your phone, John, just because I can hear some of the buzz of the Skype calls.
Okay.
Sorry. Tim? I'm a little bit flustered, just trying to deal with all this technical stuff right now.
You were asking me about the Thanksgiving thing. We just gorged like pigs. Dinner was great. But as far as questions for you guys, we talk about the Wednesday night wars and everything as far as the wrestling goes. But I don't know if you guys are on the Super JCast Discord.
We are not.
I'm noticing it just feels like nobody's saying, oh, I hate this guy or I hate that guy. But I'm noticing like there seems to be an active movement to discredit or undermine Dave Meltzer with everything that he says. And it's to the point where it has to be personal. And, they have a Patreon, too, on the Voices of Wrestling Network. And I'm wondering how much of it is financially based, how much of it is the war among the podcasters. Like, have you noticed that? Like, do you guys get along with the other podcasters?
I mean, we have lots of guests on this show. I'm not aware of any issues that we would have with any other shows. I mean, it's some are going to have issues with one another. I'd like to think we're pretty easygoing guys that get along with everybody. I mean, we've had people from Voices of Wrestling on this show. I'm good friends with a lot of people in the media myself.
Yeah, I personally don't feel that way. I mean, I think I can understand, what you're suggesting, and I could only say that Dave gets a lot of the maybe spotlight because he is the industry leader, in my opinion, for, that type of journalist who breaks news. And therefore, I think when you're always, in the spotlight, inevitably that's going to come with a lot of criticism as well. And I'm not on that Discord. I have no idea kind of what's taking place. I wouldn't necessarily think that it would be done to somehow, try to gain advantage over another podcast or a journalistic news source. I mean, I can't really see that happening for me. I think, any type of speculation is just fan speculation.
Oh, just wondered. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Back to the phone lines. Caller, you're in the Post Wrestling Cafe. What's on your mind?
John Pollock, Wai Ting. Happy Thanksgiving from the Green Mountain State of Vermont. How you guys doing?
Oh, thank you.
Hey.
Yes.
Excellent.
We don't actually celebrate Thanksgiving here, but we appreciate the warm wishes.
We're
nonetheless.
Thankful nonetheless.
We make them retroactive to October.
You guys, I was going to say you had Canadian Thanksgiving last month, right?
Yes.
So, and I've been to Canadian Thanksgiving too, so I've done it all.
It's a wild difference how we celebrate up here in Canada as opposed to our U.S. counterparts, but nonetheless, we're all binded by turkey during this festive holiday. But what's on your mind today?
Okay, well, I actually called a few weeks ago, and I was Tom from Vermont, and waiting. Actually, it wasn't a good time for my wrestling viewing habits, and he actually kind of called me on it and said, "You have an okay day today, buddy?" What's going on? I don't know if you remember that on the cafe.
I do, actually,
but
yes.
I was going to say, I watched some wrestling this week, and I'm somewhat back in it. I'm in a good mood, so things have turned around.
What specifically?
I was going to say, first of all, NXT I thought had a really good show. I'd say probably one of their best shows so far. I don't know what you guys thought of it.
We'll get into our thoughts on NXT, but what stood out in terms of the follow-up this week and probably some more eyes on NXT, you would assume?
Right. It started off with a hot promo, great tag team match. I'm really kind of digging Finn Balor being back, and him versus Tommaso Ciampa, I think would be...
Oh, he's speechless. He liked it that much. I think we might have lost you there, unfortunately. So please call back, caller. We'll have to take your call at a different time. But yeah, at some point later on throughout the show, maybe once the phone calls die down a little, John and I will get into perhaps a proper review of NXT from the night prior. Yeah, we'll just kind of keep the phone lines open. But yeah, both of us watched NXT, so we'll kind of go through some of our thoughts there. You can also hear Braden Davies from Up Next, their show already up at postwrestling.com, as well as on their YouTube channel. But I believe Tom is back, or is he? No, he's not, actually. We got Tom, please call back, but Gary is on the line right now. Gary, what's going on?
Hi, guys. Calling from the UK. I don't know if either of you have caught the issue of Impact this week.
Yes.
You did. There was a free airing in the UK. There was a Sky Channel that was doing like a preview evening, and they happened to watch it, and I saw it. I think the WWE might have cause to sue.
For doing, like what, for Southpaw Regional Wrestling?
Yeah, it just felt like an episode of Southpaw, even down to Rhino doing the butcher character.
Okay, yeah, they might have a case there because Rhino directly pretty much lifted his same character from Southpaw over. In fact, like made reference to like his tag team partner Seth Rollins on the show, saying if you ever get out of the minor leagues, you can come join us here. I mean, listen, I don't know if beyond that, I don't even know who would really own Frank the Butcher. But like you can't necessarily say, oh, because we were the first to do a 80s parody, nobody else can ever do an 80s parody. They did their own thing.
Let's be honest. When it comes to being litigious, which I really don't see in this case there being much of anything, I really don't think Impact is on the radar for them, that they're necessarily overseeing episodes of Impact under a microscope.
I mean, I think that's why they get away with it because, no one's watching. No one from the WWE is really paying attention to Impact anymore. My second question was, there was a lot of talk a couple of weeks ago about John Morrison, Nitro, Impact, whatever you want to call him, coming over. Is there any been more developments? Because he seems to be in limbo now.
No, it's it was reported that he signed. PW Insider had reported that. He's been asked about it, and he's never denied it. And I mean, there was a recent interview with Taya Valkyrie where you could see that she pretty much didn't say 100% it was happening, but I think you could read between the lines. So I'm expecting it to happen. I think I don't know what the holdup is though.
I just hope I hope they make sense, and I hope they stick him on NXT, where I think actually he could really help get some guys over again.
You'd put him in NXT.
He could get he could be a great sort of NXT North American champion, but also get some other guys over. He could really, I feel like he could have a great match with someone like a Keith Lee. I really hope he gets a chance there instead of being stuck on the main roster where I don't know if he'll ever get anywhere.
For a guy in that position, Gary, how high would you rank him in NXT? And what I mean by that is, would you put him in the main event slot ever? Would you have him, go over potential new stars like a Keith Lee or a Dijak?
I think he could elevate them. I think you could put a title on him so that he could get a Keith Lee or a Dijakovic or a Pete Dunne over because he's got enough name value. He's won world titles in pretty much everywhere he's been. So I don't think you'd put him as like your one or your two, but he could certainly be a 3 or 4 top babyface.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see if that's how high they value him. I mean, he's 40. So it's like, doesn't look it, but 40, that's a tough age to be in within WWE's system in terms of being someone who is being pushed at a level that they never went that high with him while he was in WWE. I mean,
they never pressed the button with him at all.
So yeah, I mean, there's that cause that, I mean, does he come back and he's, closer to a Shelton Benjamin role? So we'll see. I don't know where he ends up in terms of on the main roster. NXT, it's like there's only so many slots available there. So I think that if Nitro is going to occupy one of those roles, like that's a very coveted spot, and there's only so many of them on NXT. And I think it's tough when you've just introduced a Finn Balor there in a similar position and where he fits in. It's a good question.
Definitely. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks always for the content.
Thank you so much. It's he was a kind of an interesting signing that you would figure like they are loading up on anyone with name value, but where does he fit into that system given the age he's at the moment? And do you put all of your stock behind someone like that who, there's a certain way to present John Hennigan that can be effective, but we've also seen ways in which, you do understand why he wasn't able to get to that top echelon in WWE.
What name do you think he goes by?
It has to be, we could go Johnny NXT. We could be Johnny Fox. Johnny USA.
They all work, really.
They could all potentially work. So
Johnny WWE Network.
Yeah,
if he's a 205 Live guy.
Johnny Live. Yes, Johnny 205.
Back to the phone lines. Our man Neil, what's going on?
Hi fellas, how's it going with you?
Very well. Happy Thanksgiving in the UK, even though you probably don't celebrate that.
No, we don't. We'll get to that if that's all right. I've got a couple of points to make this week, if that's okay. One negative and one positive, but one very positive.
You're showing up very balanced, Neil.
Yes, that's the idea. Apologies for making a phone call out of hours myself last week.
Oh, did you? Oh, Neil.
I don't know if you remember. Well, Wai is aware of this, I think. I probably called you.
I think I dialed Neil by accident.
Oh, then it's on Wai. It's not on you, Neil.
It's more my fault, really. So sorry for bothering you.
in my defense, yeah, my cell phone started ringing at about I don't know, quarter to midnight last Thursday, and it was the post office, and I thought, what's going on? The guys need me, you know.
At some point, we will upgrade to a proper phone line and not run the show off of my cell phone. Yes.
Oh, not at all. It was funny.
People love Wai's cell phone. It's a big.
Oh well, when I exchanged a message afterwards to clear everything up. But anyway, if I could get to my first point, the negative one, and get that out of the way.
Let's go for it. Let's get negative.
I know this story's been very well covered, but Jim Cornette saying that his joke wasn't racist, it was just a starvation joke, really pissed me off, because there's a reality to that I haven't really heard much about in the coverage. He's referring to the mid-1980s famine in Ethiopia, which, you know, led to the famous Live Aid concert and charity songs, We Are the World and all that kind of thing. I mean, I don't have a strong first-hand memory of the time, but I have a relative who worked for the International Red Cross, and he's told me all about it, the reality of it, the inaction of Western governments. And I know this is heavy stuff, but that famine killed 1.2 million people. It may not have been
I completely understand what you're saying, Neil, and it's something I thought of as well. And, you know, I'm not, it's like, yeah, like, oh, it was only a famine joke. I was like, that's bad too. You know what I mean? I think Cornette's explanation was that, you know, when this was an issue at the time, that there were people making jokes about this. And I think that it's not an excuse at all. In fact, I would say that if something were going on today and people were making a joke out of, you know, where millions of people are dying, it wouldn't be met with humor either. So
his specific, I think, reference or, you know, justification was bringing up something like South Park and their the character of Starvin' Marvin. That I think was probably like a 1999-2000 thing. Certainly, I think if we're talking about like the realm of stand-up comedy or maybe even something like a South Park, it's somewhat different. I think the rules are somewhat different in those realms. I just don't think that NWA Power is really the same form where that kind of leeway
nor
would be
is
allowed.
Jim Cornette doing a stand-up routine on NWA Power. That, I mean, I think as a whole, we tend to give a lot of leeway to comedians because they are pointing out the ridiculous and the ironic and using it for comedy. And sometimes it is using tragedy with the addition of time that creates humor. And you can agree or disagree whether, you know, some jokes are going to work and others will be viewed very tasteless. You know, you hear people make jokes about the Titanic going down because it's multiple generations removed from that. I think a joke about 9/11, because we're part of a generation that lived through that probably is not going to be met with as much humor. And, you know, not to say that we're creating rules of what can and cannot be humor, but I think that it's certainly... there was a time period where it was, at least societally or in society, deemed much more acceptable than today.
Sure. I agree with you 100%, both of you. I mean, I actually enjoy comedy that plays with the boundaries of taste. I think that Ricky Gervais, Anthony Jeselnik are two comedians who do it well. But as you say, John, what they're doing is couched in layers of irony, and it's sort of obvious to the audience they're challenging attitudes. They often mean the exact opposite of what they're saying. Jim Cornette doesn't fall into that category. So I've had my fill of the man, and I really just don't want to see him turn up like a bad penny on any of the programming I enjoy. But that's all. That was the negative bit. I don't want to take up too much time, but on the positive part, I really want to wish a happy Thanksgiving to all the US viewers and listeners. And on that note, although we don't celebrate Thanksgiving where I am, I like the sentiment of taking time to be grateful for things. So I'd like to thank everyone in the post-wrestling family for what they produce. Not just you two, Braden and Davey and Nate and Phil and W.H. Park, James E. Benno, Martin.
I'm sorry, just the idea that like my friend Phil is now getting shout outs on a show is just warms my heart. But yeah, no, it's always wonderful. Thank you, Neil.
Please go on. Mike Murray,
James
E. Martin Benno.
Yeah, your guest hosts you have often, Jesse from the Six, your web contributors, Andrew Thompson, Eric Marcotte. If there's anyone I've left off, I'm really sorry. but they're the ones that come to mind.
Well, and you too, Neil. Neil, your star is shining bright. I think you're starting to get quite the following here. I hope your ego is in check here.
That's just because I kiss your ass, you guys, but it's well meant. And most of all, thanks to you, John and Wai, for betting on yourselves and starting all this 2 years ago. I think all the most loyal postmarks, watching this and listening to this are very grateful for what you do. John, you said in a recent podcast, I think it was with Phil, it may have been with WH, I'm sorry, I listen to you guys so much it blends together, but you said that you lose track of conversations with Wai that take place on the air or off the air. You're not sure, you can't really remember what you've said, whether it was on or off a podcast. And that just is an illustration. It just goes to show how genuine the banter is between you guys that we hear. And I really don't want to sound too corny, but it goes a long way towards making you feel like friends of ours as well. And, just thanks for all of the fantastic content that you produce, because, we're in the era of, I was getting a bit real earlier on, but Trump and Brexit, and we're in the middle of a general election campaign.
Neil, come on. You're ruining the Hallmark card here.
yeah. So wrestling's always been an escape, and
just say John Pollock, Wai Ting, the answer to divided politics, and they could solve Brexit. I mean, that's clearly your conclusion that you're getting at.
It is. Yes. If only everyone would listen.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Neil.
You're very welcome. And thanks again.
Thank you, Neil. We always appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks again. Bye.
Wow. If that guy isn't going to make you feel better about yourself, then
I think it's Thanksgiving for Neil every single day.
I think that guy, just what a wonderful attitude towards life that Neil possesses.
We always will make time for Neil. Back to the phone lines.
Let us do it.
Caller, what is on your mind?
Hey, guys. It's Paul from New Jersey.
Hi, Paul. Hey.
Happy American Thanksgiving, Canadians. But I wanted to, on a positive note, I know you guys had talked about it a little bit on Monday, but this week in programming, I really loved that Raw was selling the effects of Survivor Series and that NXT was celebrating their victory. And I'm sure Corbin and Reigns will have some kind of cornball promo about it on Friday. But I think it's really cool that they didn't just scrub it away until next year. And although there weren't any stakes, I really liked that you were seeing both locker rooms deal with a loss and a victory, much like a sporting event. So I think that was a really cool edge.
How about this? How about this idea for Friday is that Corbin does a spoof on the opening of NXT, and he tries to rap with all the heels taking credit for the win that Roman Reigns brought to SmackDown.
That sounds like something they would absolutely do. I think you watch this product a lot, Mr. P. I think Baron's probably going to try and take credit, even though Roman was a survivor. I think that's the way to go.
I want him to rap. That's now my standard for SmackDown on Friday, that I want to see Baron Corbin rapping. King C.
I wouldn't be against it.
Yes. But go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
I want to say, obviously Raw and SmackDown still command the higher ratings, and I know it's the NXT is a third brand, but I think I think that's a little thing WWE is trying to say. But when it comes to WrestleMania, I mean, the complaint is the show is 7 hours long. Do you guys see NXT? I mean, this is the biggest show of the year. So do you see NXT matches just happening on Takeover, or do you think these are matches that they are going to go with that? Well, we are the third brand. We're going to be on WrestleMania as well.
I think that there should be some representation of NXT at WrestleMania next year. Mm-hmm. I think that you're at a point now. Right. I wouldn't do it at every pay-per-view. I'd want to make it feel special, but for WrestleMania, to me, that should be the showcase of everything. And I would definitely have an NXT title match there. That it becomes difficult because you are doing a takeover the night before. And as we look at the past month, there were certainly complications of trying to build up to two shows at the same time. I think if it's one match, that alleviates some of that pressure, but there should be some representation there. And maybe it's one of the women, maybe it's the men's title, or maybe it's both that have some kind of
Honestly, I was a little disappointed we didn't get more integration between TakeOver into Survivor Series, meaning, I think New Japan is going through very much the same thing, having to promote two Wrestle Kingdom matches back to back. But, and the way they've chosen to do it is to basically have one lead directly into the other. I mean, TakeOver can exist as a way to say whoever wins this NXT title match goes on to WrestleMania to defend it, which I think, makes for an interesting almost mini tournament like we're seeing in New Japan right now. So I definitely think we're going to get some NXT representation, whether it just be in a battle royal or maybe in a tag team turmoil match. But I definitely think at least perhaps
you'll probably see some NXT people in either or both Royal Rumbles as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, I think you almost have to. I mean, like, I would love to see a guy like Adam Cole defending the title on WrestleMania. But yeah, anyway, that's all I got. And I just want to say, man, I love this community. This has been so much fun. It does feel like a group of friends just talking about wrestling. And I've actually completely replaced Twitter, deleted it off my phone with Post Wrestling Forum, and it's just a better way to live. So yeah, thanks guys, and happy holidays.
Paul, I'm going to isolate this audio clip, and I'm going to play it for myself every day. Thank you.
Please do.
Thank you, Paul.
One of our greatest achievements.
We killed Twitter.
Oh, I would love it. If I could just pull off one thing, if I could be Thanos, dude, I would snap my fingers so quick.
Delete half of Twitter?
All of it.
All of it.
Gone.
Wow.
Yeah. Twitter would be gone. I'd spare Instagram. Facebook, gone.
I also wanted to just kind of bring up a point that Paul was alluding to about how, coming off of this Survivor Series, we're certainly seeing the results of the wins or the losses. And I got me to thinking about how the points ultimately worked out after Survivor Series, where it was 4-2-1, I believe, in favor of NXT. I mean, it very well could have been 3-2-2 to make things balanced, but clearly they wanted a very clear winner and a very clear loser so that you could tell those stories. And I found that certainly, very unique, especially as far as WWE programming goes, where they don't really focus on the losing all that much.
We saw it last year with SmackDown. They went nowhere with that. And it was just, I mean, that's kind of the concern, is that do you just position Raw? And I mean, there was less interest in Raw this week.
Well,
and
coming off of this rating, do you think they'll do this again next year? Tell the story of the loser.
It's a question it's hard to look a year. My immediate question is, do they focus on the Survivor Series loss beyond this week?
Right.
Do they look at that number and say, hey, we drove people off. We presented ourselves as the losers, and instead people were just indifferent to the show. It becomes difficult when you're that's the story you're going with. Like, the show as a whole failed. So, hey, come watch the failing show. And that's a tougher story to do than the winning brand. And I think AEW is kind of doing the same story with Hangman Page, with Kenny Omega. Granted, he had the win this week, but stars that are in these slumps and Cody now being frozen out of the title situation. So I think it's interesting to compare the two of how they do stories built around losses and how you come back from those. It's not some disqualifier that you can't do those stories, but they're delicate.
Back to the phone lines. Caller, you're on Post Wrestling. What's going on?
It's MJ in Florida.
In Florida? What?
Florida, wow.
MJ from FL. I can't believe it.
MJ from the FLA.
Do you have? I guess you have family from Florida.
Yeah, my parents live in Florida, so I'm down here for Thanksgiving, and I had to sneak away from the turkey and stuffing to wish all of you listening a happy Thanksgiving.
Well,
express my gratitude and thankfulness for the Post family and everyone that does great content in the community that's been fostered.
Are you indoors, MJ? I mean, it's weird not having the street ambience in the background.
Can we hear some
I'm outside right now.
Oh, you are outside. Man, Florida is just very calm right now.
It is very calm in the elderly community in which I am staying at the moment.
What is the Thanksgiving dish of choice for MJ? What is the first thing you're going for at Thanksgiving?
Swedish meatballs.
Swedish
Family
meatballs.
tradition.
Oh, that's not a bad choice at all. Not something I have with Thanksgiving, but that's a great add-on.
We have it with pretty much every holiday. It serves as the appetizer, and we will be going to a clubhouse later for dinner, where I'm sure they will have lots of traditional Thanksgiving food.
Well, that's you've got your day sorted, MJ. I'm glad you made us a little part of it.
Yeah, I also wanted to share a quick little funny anecdote. I watched AEW, or I tried to watch it last night. My mom asked me if they were selling stuff during the first segment, which I then heard you guys on the review say something similar. So clearly they're getting their message across that you should go buy AEW merch.
Yes, someone actually did send me an image of the Chris Jericho shirt that I assume is legit and probably on Pro Wrestling Tees already.
It is. I've already
It is up
enjoyed
there.
it.
Okay,
I got my buddy a shirt.
Chris Jericho
shirt.
Wow.
Shirt. So
Chris Jericho.
So that and the bubbly.
The bubbly website, that was just obvious, like an instant. It was going to crash the website, and they probably were going to advertise a sellout immediately, with limited supply, of course.
I wish that as they promoted, like they should have promoted the shirt, and then the Pro Wrestling Tees guys in the front row could have signs that said available now, and just held those up. They should have been ready.
John Pollock, ever the segueist. My other little funny thing was I saw a friend of the show and friend of the community, Scrump, and I said, "Oh, Scrump," and my mom said, "What's a Scrump?"
Amazing.
And I said, "A friend."
Yeah, we got.
So happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, and happy Stanksgiving as well.
Wow, very good, John.
Yes.
Thanks, MJ.
On brand. Take care, guys.
Take care. A bit of breaking news here in the MMA front. According to Dana White, this comes from Brett Okamoto on from ESPN on Twitter. According to Dana White, Conor McGregor versus Cowboy is a go for UFC 246 on January 18th.
All right. So
additionally, sources tell me Cowboy has agreed to a new multi-fight deal with the UFC.
All right. So that was the fight they had. Conor McGregor had done the announcement that he was planning to do 3 fights coming up, with the first being January 18th. He named the date before that was a thing, before there was any agreement in place. But the UFC, they were not scheduled to do a pay-per-view in January. But when McGregor made his intentions known, they basically created this event, and they had started adding fights to that card. And it was just a question, is this going to be a pay-per-view? Because if we have Conor, obviously it's a pay-per-view. If not, it probably would not have been. So that's why when John Jones was announced for Dominic Reyes, they didn't have a number attached to it, because it might be 247, it might be 246, given if they would get McGregor or not. I think things were trending in the direction that McGregor was going to come to an agreement, but it was Donald Cerrone, not Justin Gaethje, who ends up getting the fight. What does that do for your interest, Way, seeing McGregor and Cerrone at this stage where I think Donald Cerrone, he has slowed a bit, but I think that obviously this is going to be an enormous fight. How enormous will be the ultimate question.
Really big for me. I mean, I feel like at this point, to really catch me as a lapsed fan's attention, it really would have to be somewhat of a superstar fight. I think at this point, Conor fights are so rare that I'll definitely make time to see any appearance. But this is, Conor versus Cerrone, which I think is really a dream match. I look forward to seeing, what interviews these two might partake in. The match itself, the result really, to me, I don't even really care. It's just more so about the spectacle of seeing these two, to me, superstars probably have a, what we can expect to be a really, really fun matchup. That certainly has my interest. So
yeah, so this will be McGregor's first fight since the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, which is October of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And this was obviously going to be a big point, because now it's ESPN Plus that is distributing the pay-per-views in the US. So that creates a whole new dynamic, because the UFC, they're getting X amount regardless of how the pay-per-view performs.
Right.
So there's less incentive for the UFC to make these enormous big fights. And, Cerrone getting a new deal out of this tells you that they were willing to go that extra step. But, that's part of it too. For McGregor's side, it's, well, where are the pay-per-view buys at now? If I'm being paid a percentage and now it's less buys that are coming in on ESPN Plus, I want a deal that guarantees me what I would be making in the previous era. And that's, I think, what managers have to be looking at for the top guys that are out there, like a Conor McGregor, that is going to be making a big difference. ESPN Plus has to be jumping just in joy to have Conor McGregor that's going to direct people to their platform on January 18th, which is going to be the biggest fight in ESPN Plus's history.
For sure. Let's go back to the phone lines right now. Caller, you're in the Post Wrestling Cafe. What's up?
Tom from Vermont, back from the dead. How are you doing, Wai Ting? Sorry, I got cut off earlier.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that, Tom. What's going on? Please finish your thought.
Okay, so where was I? Okay, so NXT started off the great promo. Can't wait for Tommaso Ciampa versus Finn Balor. Then we got a really good tag match starting off. So I thought things were really hitting on all cylinders. AEW Dynamite was good. We had Jericho come out with his dad and do the classic, we hate your town sports team, which is always fun, but we haven't seen in a few years. So that was also good. Have you guys seen Impact this week?
Yeah, I briefly discussed it. We both briefly discussed it on AEW Dynamite last night. Sorry, Rewind to Dynamite last night.
We weren't on TNT.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
I haven't listened to it.
No,
okay.
it's fine. Yeah, it's what did you think about the episode overall and doing this for 1 week?
Well, see, I was really excited when I saw the when I saw the promos. I was really excited, and I'm actually been pretty high on Impact for the last year. I think they've kind of been on an upward trend, and it's kind of like a good thing if you want something a little different.
Yep.
But I hated it. I hated the throwback episode. I thought I was going to love it, and they just did it so. It was just so poor. The jokes were so hacky, and it was just dead. Like, I don't know. Like, I was so disappointed. I wanted to like it so.
I get the sentiment. Like, I was like in the middle. I think Way really liked it. You really hated it. I was kind of Switzerland here, but I think most of all, it was a show that was written by wrestlers and people in the industry, that it was almost for wrestlers and people in the industry. And if the fans get the jokes, cool. I think they can appreciate the overall tone of the show and being a throwback. But it just seemed to be, it was really fun amongst those there. And I think there was some legitimately very funny stuff on the show. As I said on Wednesday night show, I've only seen the first hour. I haven't seen the entire 2, but I'll say by the time we got to the 8-person tag at the end of the first hour, this felt like this was a great idea for a 1-hour show. I don't know about 2, but again, I've not watched the entire episode, so I can't comment on the second hour.
I think the sheer fact that we're even having this discussion is a win for Impact, because they could have the best matches in the world, and I don't know. At this point, I feel like we get our fill of that sort of thing somewhere else. Impact has to try very different things in order to get people's attention, and this to me was a win for that reason.
I got a question for you guys, actually. Actually caught an episode of Ring of Honor this week for the first time in months, and they're still kind of spiraling, doing their thing. What do you think Ring of Honor needs to do to distinguish themselves and actually kind of get back to the Ring of Honor a few years ago?
I think Ring of Honor needs enormous changes to just the overall presentation of the show. They need a mission statement. I just think they need almost like a rebranding. Not to say rename Ring of Honor, but I think the overall, the tone of the show and just, it's just off people's radar at the moment. They are where Impact was, I would say, around 2017, around that period where people had just given up on the show. I think now you're getting people that are at least checking in on Impact. They're generally happy with what they see on Impact. Ring of Honor just seems to be, the TV show is very skippable, and I think it's going to be noteworthy to see how much or how little attention is given to Final Battle in a couple of weeks, when that is their big year-end show. And they head-to-head that night, Warrior Wrestling is doing a show on Fight TV, and if you look at that lineup, it is outstanding, the lineup. And I could see a lot of people that maybe have budgeted their dollars in the past towards the ROH pay-per-view each quarter are going to be checking out that Warrior Wrestling show, because it is a super deep lineup that's happening there. I'll actually pull up the card later, but yeah, that's in a nutshell. I think this has been a really, really tough year for ROH, just in terms of the perception of the product. But over these past few months, with the things that have gone down with Kelly Klein, the things that Joey Mercury has been putting out there in public, like, this has just been a really bad period for ROH perception-wise to the outside world.
Thank you very much for the call, Tim. We move on with the phone lines. Caller, you're on. What's going on?
How you doing, man? How are you?
Oh, boy.
I was worried. I was like, where is this guy on Thanksgiving? He has to be somewhere near a phone.
How are you?
I love that, like, I never recognize your number, so I have no idea that it's you until I hear that. Hey, guys. How's it going? Oh, my.
My sultry voice, right?
Oh, my goodness. All right, well.
Conor McGregor versus Donald Cerrone. Brandon?
Oh, John, you're such a wonderful pivot, man. I'm not really excited for it, you know what I mean? It doesn't, especially at welterweight, it doesn't really grip me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, was that in the report that it's going to be at welterweight?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the report.
Okay.
It doesn't really grip me though. You know what I mean? needed more meat on the bone for McGregor's next fight, and I mean, Cerrone ain't it. Especially, yeah, I think Cerrone's pretty shot worn too. I mean, I don't know.
I think it's a fight that it's McGregor should be a significant favorite in this fight, but again, I think the people are going to be. I think Donald Cerrone. It's a fight you can certainly sell in terms of a test for Conor McGregor coming back, having not fought in well over a year by the time they get into the cage in January. And
well, that's a lie. He's been fighting the courts.
He has been outside. He's been very busy, and I will also look that now that he has a fight announced, all that stuff is going to be covered, and all of that stuff is going to be. I don't know how available Conor is going to make himself in the lead up to this fight. I would say ESPN Plus certainly will want him out there promoting the fight. How much media is he going to do? Because he's going to be. All of these things are going to be brought up, and he did the one interview with Ariel Helwani a couple of months back, but there's outstanding issues with Conor McGregor, some that he has denied, but nonetheless, this has not been a stellar past 12 months for him in the legal sense.
I'm also curious, like, what the salary structure for this fight is. I mean, especially being on ESPN Plus.
Yeah, that's a great question about the whole economics of this and how they had to structure a deal with Conor McGregor in this new era with ESPN Plus. I'd be very curious if that ends up. We get to find out the details of that, because that's like, not an easy hurdle to get over to structure that. So, yeah.
Yeah, nobody seems to have been able to do that, especially getting those pay-per-view numbers off of ESPN Plus either. You can't get a really concrete number off of that stuff. It's insane. It's one of the great mysteries of this partnership with the UFC at ESPN Plus.
Well, and that was this was in the Observer a few weeks ago, that there was like advertisers who have talked about the fact that ESPN Plus and some of these streaming services, even though the data is so much more instant and it's available and they're able to get breakdowns of who's buying these shows, it's very hard for these advertisers to see this information beyond just the numbers of how many are there. And it's been frustrating for some advertisers. And you would think that obviously, like, why are these such secretive numbers? So it's a big mystery of what these, how many people are watching a typical standard UFC pay-per-view as opposed to 2 years ago. Is it greater? Is it less? That's a big mystery.
It's crazy. Canelo made $36 million off of his last boxing match, and you don't even know how many people were watching that fight. It's kind of mesmerizing to me.
How do you find? Do you have ESPN Plus, Brandon?
I do have it. Yes, I do.
How is it? Because we don't get it in Canada. How do you feel it is overall as a viewing experience when you're watching a fight? Do you have technical problems? Is it pretty seamless when it comes to UFCs or other programming you watch?
I mean, the streaming has been perfect for me. I haven't had any issues with buffering or anything like that. It's been pretty flawless. But I mean, a lot of people I know that have it have complained about getting knocked out of the service and have to relog in again.
Right.
Buffering issues and streaming issues. So it's a case by case basis for certain people. But for me personally, it's been pretty good.
All right. Well, Brandon,
I have one serious question, real quick.
I wasn't expecting a serious question, but go for it.
Regarding Morrow, and I read your thing today, and I applaud you on that. It was awesome.
Thank you.
Could the WWE be liable if, like, something? I don't want to wish anything bad on him happening, but if Morrow, I don't know, you know what I mean. If something bad happened to him, could the WWE be liable for that with cyberbullying and whatnot? And I was curious about your thoughts on that. I'm out of here. Peace. Happy Thanksgiving and whatever you guys celebrate today.
Thanks a lot, Brandon. Thanks a lot, Brandon. In terms of a lawsuit, I don't want to comment because, like, I don't know what that would open themselves up to in the hypothetical sense. Obviously, if it was something where they decided to cut ties with Morrow, which I have no indication that is going to happen, that could certainly open you up to something. Someone that is struggling very openly with mental health problems, and you were to let them go or not re-sign them. That could certainly open you up, but I would never fathom that would happen.
I don't see it. I think if this connection were to be severed, it would probably be Morrow's call.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's kind of difficult to speculate beyond that. We go back to the phone lines now. Nas. I assume this is Nas from New York, but not the rapper?
Yeah, hey guys. Thank you for taking my call.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, firstly, happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
I really want to thank you guys for all the content that you produce. It's really awesome. So I've been a casual WWE fan for like ever, like completely in and out for the big pay-per-views and stuff. And I stumbled onto you guys like around WrestleMania this year, and I've been like hooked ever since. You guys are really amazing.
How did you find us?
Well, I have Pocket Cast, so I found your podcast, cool. And from there, like, I recently subscribed to your Patreon. I subscribed to the Up Next guys as well. Like, it's amazing. I've never been into wrestling as much as I am now, and it's all because of you guys. I even went to a New Japan show.
Wow!
And I've never even heard of New Japan like until very recently.
Was this the recent show at the Hammerstein Ballroom?
Yes, and I actually went only because John, you recommended it in one of the shows, and it was a disaster because I think there was a 90-minute delay because of an ambulance missing. It just amazes me that it wasn't a bigger deal. Like it was just like news for like few hours, and it was gone.
It was pretty notable that night, but I think when the show started, I mean, to the credit of that crowd, like they seemed awesome for that show. I mean, it was a very good show. It was just, obviously I can sympathize with your frustration of being there for so long waiting.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna take up too much of your time. I just have one question. I really am curious about. I was never into TV ratings either, but I'm really curious how these things work. You can explain this. So I have YouTube TV.
Yeah.
Which is I pay $50 a month for it, and it's and I watch all my live TV through that, and I sometimes I have unlimited DVR with that too, and sometimes I'll watch it through on record or later on. So how does these rating numbers that come out the day after, how do they what are they taking my views into account? Like I know a lot of people have Hulu Live as well, like on other stuff. I'm just really curious. So thank you guys for everything that you do, and keep up the good work.
All right. Thanks a lot for the call. Yeah, it's so for the ratings in terms of like actually combing them all together, it's basically if you're a Nielsen family, like then you are representative of a larger number. So if you are, and we're in Canada, so we're not part of this, but you're selected and then you are going to be monitored, and they're able to monitor like the viewers per home, but it's like, they're not, it's at best, it is an estimate, but the point is the number that they come to, given whatever the margin of error is, it's the acceptable currency that advertisers accept. They look at them. They are credible numbers. They are accepted. So I know sometimes people look at it, it's like, oh, how accurate are these? I mean, fair. It's, if something turns out to be 2.1 million, could it be 2.2? Could it be 2.0? I mean, there's going to be that margin of error, but it's a survey. It's like any survey.
It's the best system we have.
It's the best system, and most of all, it's the accepted system. So that is not changing. Now, watching on YouTube Live, if you're watching on a digital product like Fight TV, you're watching AEW Plus, like they're going to know down to the person who is watching. And I don't know how you would necessarily filter in YouTube TV onto TNT's number, but they get their streaming numbers as well. So I'm not as familiar with YouTube TV. I don't have it. So
streaming numbers are obviously very important, but maybe more so internally than, I mean, it's something they could present to advertisers as well.
Yeah.
Right? So.
And typically like it's a much, much smaller percentage that is streaming the show versus watching it on television. And as we're also seeing through like the data that like Dave Meltzer is getting, like the DVR numbers are really high for both shows at the moment. The issue is like, obviously if you have 5 million people watching your show, that's wonderful. But the goal for these networks is to monetize your show and therefore present advertising that these 5 million people, enough of a percentage is going to pay for these products that justify them advertising on the network, and therefore you're making this profitable. If you're getting 10 million viewers and you can't sell ad rates for shit, then it's not worth the money you're paying for this program, regardless of the number you're getting. And I always utilize, like, one comparison I use is that if Wai and I went out to a wrestling event and we handed out 5,000 flyers and 10 people went to our website as a result of that, and from that percentage joined our Patreon, like, how much money did we spend on those? Like, that 5,000 number is only as valuable as what you're able to convert over, and is valuable to the advertisers.
For sure. But I mean, let's say if that was our only way of getting new patrons, I mean, we'd probably, spend even more effort and try not just giving out 5,000 flyers, but 10,000 flyers, 20,000
right.
flyers.
I'm just more looking at, it's not so much the number of doors you knock on, it's the amount that answer, engage, and actually want to spend money on your product.
I suppose on the topic of, streaming numbers, I mean, this type of information might not be as, open to the public and the media as, say, Nielsen numbers. But
I would love to share you my discussions with companies in Canada that, I swear to God, guard these numbers like they're the Pentagon Papers.
Right.
It is very difficult at times to get these numbers. All credit in the world to Dave Meltzer, who gets some incredible data that is not easy to come by.
But like when you and I in the audience, we speculate on like Thursday, 2:00, these numbers come out. I mean, are we giving too much, maybe, value to what essentially is, a huge part of the pie, but really maybe just one, not the complete pie for somebody like AEW or NXT?
Yeah, to a degree. This is, to me, I think it's very valuable to be monitoring this, but I would also caution that 1 week is not something that has to be the be all end all. You are looking for overall trends and patterns. And AEW, what we can take from this, like, if they are able to maintain this at the end of the road, they stand to make a ton if the television industry stays in the same lane it's in at the moment and values this kind of programming with this level of audience in this fractured world, that this will be their ultimate, like, that is where the money is at the end of this. So it is very valuable.
So more and more, I mean, I feel like this is sort of like some of the company line we've heard from the AEW brass themselves, but is this battle not so much between AEW and NXT, but really between AEW and themselves, or NXT and themselves, so that they, at the very least maintain this number, so that when the TV deal does run out, they can negotiate for something?
Yeah, I look at it, I mean, ultimately, you're looking at this pool of wrestling fans that have a choice on Wednesday nights, and you would look at, these are the two of the programs on Wednesday night, who is the chief competitor to each side, and that's going to fluctuate between the two. So I think it's natural to compare and look at what is NXT attracting, what is AEW attracting. But you're right, there's definitely, beyond just television numbers, if BR Live is seeing a spike because of AEW Dynamite, that is a very valuable property for us. We talk about the idea of ESPN Plus and what can the UFC drive towards them. That is a really valuable tool, because everyone is trying to build up their streaming services at the moment, and we're just getting more and more of them. Disney Plus has over 10 million subscribers already. DAZN has just hit 8 million worldwide subscribers. So we're seeing these enormous numbers, and then you have smaller niche services like a BR Live, like a WWE Network, and you're going to value programming that can, turn wrestling fans into paying subscribers, which I would say, of the sports world, I would look, wrestling fans are much more, that's less of a hang up for them to spend money on a service or a product than perhaps a hockey fan, that not all of them are getting their center ice package. Most are just watching hockey for free on TV. So when you suddenly have to pay for a service, it's a little tougher, I think, than it is for combat sports fans who have it's ingrained that the big fights, the big shows, big pay-per-views, you do have to spend money for.
Back to the phone lines. We go to Australia. Chris Thunder from Down Under. You're in the Post Wrestling Cafe. What's up?
Good morning, guys. How are you?
We're doing well, Chris. How are you?
Good. Just wanted to talk about Rhea Ripley. She's only been in the company a little over a year, sort of full time now, and she's really risen up the ranks quite quickly, which I was sort of surprised how quick they've put the rocket on her, so to speak.
Yeah, she's I think when you look back at this month of the people that have benefited greatly, she is in that conversation of one of the top, like where she is now, the reception she got last night on the NXT episode. I think like you have to look at Shayna Baszler, Rhea Ripley as the 1-2 in terms of who they see as the top women on that NXT brand at the moment. So I thought the second Mae Young Classic, she was one of the standouts to me. I came out very impressed by her and just her overall presence and where she is now, that she feels like the top female babyface now on NXT. And I don't even know if that was the case 2 months ago. Like I think this past month really cemented that status.
Yeah, absolutely. And then a little about Dakota Kai's turn. How do you think it's gone so far?
Thank you, Chris.
I thought the Dakota Kai turn was great, and it has set up so many matches. You have they did the match with Candice LeRae, but you have programs obviously with Tegan Nox. You have one with Rhea Ripley potentially. You have one with Mia Yim when she comes back. You have set up so many different angles for Dakota Kai. I didn't think Wednesday's follow-up was great. I think having her wrestle already was a little too quick. I would have been much happier if she had just spoken, or there could have been an angle with her, maybe attacking Candice LeRae before we instantly go to a match.
I enjoyed it. I mean, I think the goal of having her be on TV in a match was just to give her screen time. She did the big angle on Saturday, but it wasn't like she had any ring time at all. So I think with that, in combination of Survivor Series possibly overshadowing a lot of that, what that angle accomplished, I think just simply having her on TV, getting into people's heads that, hey, this is a character that we're focusing on, who's been going through a whole lot of storyline development. I felt like that was important. I suppose at this point, shall we springboard into our brief NXT review?
Yeah, let's talk about highlights of the show as well. What did you think about the start of the show with the big celebration?
With the Russell and Flow.
Yeah.
Super corny. But I thought it
was kind of like the Wrestle Rock Rumble.
Well, I mean, you didn't have people actually rap, like
no.
When we see Tommaso
Well,
Ciampa
I meant
rap.
more so like some of the dancing. There was a wide scale of people that had to dance.
I understand.
Drake Younger being my favorite.
I understand the idea of like wanting to create this like big party atmosphere that the Undisputed Era can just come in and crash and interrupt. It's a bit weird when it's like wrestlers. I think like it reminded me a little bit of Glow. Like when everybody comes out, and
sure,
like they just gather.
I still liked it.
It was fine.
I like the idea behind it and making it like that can only work in Full Sail.
Sure, yeah, you're right.
Can you imagine them doing that on SmackDown or Raw?
I thought there were moments where it felt like, oh, this is like a really hit presentation. It's like, oh, like like the song is good. I think he's a great rapper. And then like the crowd dancing around the ring, it felt like everybody was young and like this felt like a fun party, but it felt a little forced. Yes.
But I understood the idea behind it, and I think it got over to the crowd there at Full Sail.
Everything gets over to that crowd.
I guess so. I guess it's a low bar. Then we go into the tag match, which was a great match, but had a major issue in very early on, where Bobby Fish was military pressed to the floor onto Kyle O'Reilly, suffered an injury. Haven't heard an update on him yet, but he gets replaced in the match by Roderick Strong. And I was
mid-commercial.
Yeah, mid-commercial. I was told like they pretty much did this match on the fly, and
amazing.
Strong just took over for Bobby Fish. Just probably wasn't scheduled to be doing anything on the show.
Despite everything, I thought these guys ended up having a really hot match.
It was a really good match.
And thank goodness they had not only, the concept of this like Freebird rule attached to the Undisputed Era, but the fact that they had a veteran on the level of a Roderick Strong to be put into this position, because man, given the circumstance, like I don't know how many people you would have been able to trust to just all of a sudden go from a managerial role to having, the type of match that these guys did. No warm up. Like I would assume Roderick Strong was maybe a part of some of the, going through the match and talking about what they were going to do. But God, like I thought, what an impressive, showing up from Roderick Strong just doing this on the fly. Otherwise, I thought really good showcase for Dijak as well. And what about that huge pounce from Keith Lee to Adam Cole?
That pounce was unbelievable.
Amazing.
I mean, there's your GIF.
Oh, it's already out there.
Oh, yeah.
He like sent him into orbit.
Yeah, when someone gets owned on Twitter.
Yes.
That favorite word, owned.
Yeah. And I feel really bad for Bobby Fish. Like, it just seems like it's a never-ending story for
Mike Johnson had the update that apparently after the show he was walking around. Hopefully it's not something serious because that's a guy that's been plagued by injuries and not getting any younger. He's in this great role at this time, so hopefully it was just a precaution and he ends up being okay.
Do you have any cause for concern of perhaps the type of style of match that these guys have been wrestling? They've been going really hard for this entire run since NXT has of NXT period, but especially this week.
Yeah, I mean,
but it's a freak accident. Like, they went through a war.
This was like, just to me, it was like just an unfortunate landing on the floor, which that's typically the source of serious injuries. And it'd be interesting to talk to someone that does the constant wear and tear. Does that make you more prone to just a freak accident occurring, that you're asking a lot of your body, and then it's the simple things that typically do the kind of damage. Hopefully this isn't going to be a serious injury for him, but we'll keep people posted on that. I just wanted to talk about a few other we can move to the Dakota Kai Candice LeRae match. This one ended after a DQ with Dakota Kai using the knee brace of Tegan Nox, which is now her version of Tommaso Ciampa's crutch that she's just going to walk around with and attack people with, I guess. This is quite the kind of awkward to walk around with a knee brace, but that's what she's using now.
Yeah. Is it that awkward? I mean, of course it's awkward.
Would you walk down the street
Would you prefer a broom with barbed wire?
No, I would prefer knee brace would top the barbed wire broom.
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I thought the match itself was a little bit sloppy, but despite that, I thought it was a strong character follow-up for Dakota Kai after doing the heel turn. Her presence was good, her aggression was good, and I think as a symbolic prop, like the knee brace, is excellent.
Lio Rush defended the title against Akira Tozawa. I thought this was the match of the show.
Yeah.
Very scary moment in the middle of this where it looked like Tozawa was at least briefly knocked out of it. His mouth guard fell out, and then as Lio Rush came for, the come up?
Yeah.
Off the ropes where he just springs off, and Tozawa wasn't ready for it, but then they just got right back into it and finished the match without any issues. The referee was immediately checking on Akira Tozawa, and as you had warned me on Wednesday night, the German off the apron spot, which they were constantly teasing, they did, although thankfully Rush rotated over, didn't take like the suplex onto his back on the floor.
Like a moonsault he took off.
Yeah.
But Tozawa took a rough
Tozawa's still going off of this thing, which is not fun. And there was one of those in the Dakota Kai match as well with LeRae where they did the German onto the edge and Dakota Kai just hit the edge at just this painful looking impact.
Yeah. I mean, that's
like
the level.
These guys were like killing themselves on the show.
That is part of the reason I think why NXT has been so successful, but also part of the risk. I mean, that really is involved at a higher level, in my opinion, for NXT wrestlers than main roster wrestlers, because they have to be expected to work this type of hard style for every single TV appearance that they have. But this match I thought was awesome. It was so refreshing to see like Akira Tozawa get to perform in front of this type of audience, to be able to have a style of match where like it felt like he was completely unshackled to do anything he wanted. I thought he was excellent. I thought Lio Rush, listen, in his brief title run thus far with the Cruiserweight belt,
he's had some awesome matches.
We can already classify him as one of the best Cruiserweight, like of this purple Cruiserweight title reign. He already is amongst, one of the best, simply because of the environments that he's been able to showcase himself in front of, the string of matches, of great matches he's had. So I really enjoyed this. These two killed themselves here, but it was nice to see that they did in front of a crowd that appreciated it.
Xia Li destroyed Vanessa Bourne quick, and then Shayna Baszler came out with Jessamine Duke and Marina Shafir teasing something there, maybe for television, and then Rhea Ripley was the one who came to make the save, and that being the ultimate program. Would you hold off on Baszler Ripley for a takeover? Do you see them doing that beforehand?
I would definitely hold it off for a takeover. I mean, that's your big marquee match coming out of Survivor Series and War Games this weekend, like on this show. Baszler and Ripley both feel like such bigger stars, and that's directly due to the value that they gave them on Survivor Series.
Do you think if you did something like a loser leaves NXT between those two, that it's at least believable, because you could argue either one could be going to the main roster?
That is very true. Yeah, very true. I do feel like though it would I think any title match would pretty much telegraph. Like everybody from this point on would expect Shayna in any title match to lose and then leave the roster.
It's tough because if we're looking, that show is February 16th. If you were to be doing Shayna and Becky Lynch, do you want to be waiting that long to be reigniting that program?
Shayna and Becky. I kind of see that as more of a long-term deal. You
don't see that at WrestleMania.
Oh, I see it at WrestleMania.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is that if you want to get the teases for that going, do you wait till mid-February for her to lose the title and then Shayna's brought on to Raw?
Isn't that perfect timing? With 2 months?
I wouldn't want it to be dormant for the next 2 months where it's not acknowledged and you're not doing anything in that direction.
Teases here and there, especially at a place like the Rumble, right?
Yeah.
I think that timing could work out really well to get all of those things in place. But I thought, Ripley's presence was really strong here. And again, they teased also the stuff with Dakota Kai. So we could even potentially see some type of Shayna Baszler, Dakota Kai team up. Wouldn't that be interesting?
What if they did a surprise where, this is all just like theories here, if Shayna ended up winning the Royal Rumble as champion?
And then you do a champ versus champ?
Well, you could have Shayna drop it along the way, but the point is she gets her wish to face Becky Lynch at WrestleMania. That's how you set up the match.
Yeah.
And you could still do TakeOver, and you don't know which way they're going. You don't have to do the loser leaves NXT step.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a title match at that point. And then Ripley wins, and Baszler can go to WrestleMania, do their thing with Becky, and then you have that back burner loss to Rhea Ripley that you can go to at some point down the road.
Absolutely, you can.
So a lot of interesting ideas with Shayna Baszler and Rhea Ripley coming out of this last month. And then the main event was Finn Balor, Tommaso Ciampa. They went about, I'd say, 12 or so minutes, and it featured Adam Cole getting involved, nailing Ciampa, and then it ended with a 1916 by Finn Balor for the win. Afterwards, the two were posing over top of Ciampa, and Balor nailed Adam Cole. So the idea was that he is not with the Undisputed Era, but he's also not a babyface, which is a tough role to be in, where you're not the top heel, but you're like, you have issues with the top heels, and you're also not a babyface.
He's a lone wolf,
Yeah, this got a babyface response from this crowd, which I don't know if 3-4 weeks in you want to be getting that reaction from the audience, but
I suppose more important for Balor at the moment is just to simply get people, curious about what he's doing, curious to see him perform. I mean, clearly teasing some sort of three-way going on between the three here.
Mm-hmm. I guess unless Gargano is back and they go back to that program.
Right. Yeah. But I feel like, the Balor appearance has kind of lost a bit of steam given, I feel like it's kind of taken a backseat to both War Games and also Survivor Series itself. So it feels like maybe now is when we can really put the focus on Finn Balor as a heel on his way to a title program.
Yeah. It was a good follow-up. I didn't think it was a home run show on NXT, but I really enjoyed Lio Rush and Tozawa, and I love that tag match. So I would certainly recommend those two. Main event, it was good, but I wouldn't put it ahead of those other two matches.
No, I like Tozawa versus Rush a bit more. But I thought it was a really nice, cohesive show that was like a good follow-up to me for the great value that they had on Survivor Series.
Yeah, I'm very curious about this number. So we'll see when that comes out, if it's Friday, if it's Monday. But they should get a bump coming off of the last month. So I would expect that they win in total viewers again this week.
I would expect so too. The more curious number is, of course, the prime demographic.
Yeah, which I don't see shifting. I don't see that NXT's threatening in those categories. That I could see a very similar outcome to what we saw last week.
Back to the phone lines. We'll take as many calls as we can before we have to get out of here. But caller, you've been waiting for a long time. Thank you for your patience. What's on your mind?
No problem. It's not like I was waiting 40 minutes or anything. So.
Foily minutes. That's very, very well timed. Where's our T-shirt? Wait, we need to get a T-shirt.
A little bit of the foily. I'll try to work on that.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the call, guys. Jared from Ottawa here. Happy Thanksgiving from one Canadian to two.
And a Merry Christmas.
Maybe jump back to the. Yeah. Just wanted to jump back to the ratings discussion maybe real quickly. Do you think that NXT doing well in the long run helps NXT, or do you think it hurts Raw and SmackDown? Because if I'm like USA or Fox looking at the ratings of a Raw or a SmackDown versus NXT and what I'm paying for Raw or SmackDown versus NXT, I don't know that they're really seeing the, like a trade-off there. Like I think NXT is kind of outperforming what USA is maybe paying for it in comparison to a Raw, which is much more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, with Raw, it's like they're locked in for 5 years. So I think with NXT, I think the only end result is that it's going to help NXT, because at the end of this television contract, their argument is that, hey, we're getting, if let's say their audience swells that much more over the next couple of months that they can go to the table and say, hey, the market value is what you're paying for Raw. You guys got a steal here with us because we outperformed what expectations were at that dollar figure. So I think it's more so a feather in NXT's cap that as opposed to if say Raw if their deal was coming up in a year and you could make those comparisons and say, go the other way. Anything else, Jared?
All right, guys, thanks. No, that was all. Thanks for taking the call. I'm home from work today, so it's nice to be able to watch the show live rather than recorded.
Cool, man. Thanks a lot for the call. We appreciate it.
I think, all this conversation is, to me, really important now that we're a month into this whole, Wednesday Night Wars thing. The fact that the numbers themselves obviously are fun to look at, fun to talk about, but they don't represent the whole picture of what value.
And a big part of it is what USA and TNT, what they're paying for these shows, what was in the slots prior, and if these are ultimately profitable shows given what they are spending on it. And it's different amounts. So it's you grade things very differently of Raw that's getting $265 million a year versus TNT that they're doing they're covering the production costs, and there's some other payment in there.
A TNT or a USA, I really don't know if they're paying such close attention to seeing what AEW or NXT or what the competition is doing that particular night, as much as they are looking at what everybody on TV is doing.
Yeah,
for that
the goal
night.
If you're AEW, at this point, their production's covered. That's a great thing, and they share a bit in the ad revenue. But if they're looking at that 18 to 49 demo and they're able to keep this consistent, and they say, hey, here is the comparable of what this number represents in the market and what TNT values this at, it's great. It's negotiating points for them to be able to go to that, maintain this number, and say, this is what we can produce. We've been able to show a consistency to keep this number, and at the end of it, hopefully that TNT says you're right and you're worth this much, and suddenly the amount of money that AEW is putting into this startup, the big payoff comes when their TV contract is due.
Certainly.
Is that all for calls for now?
That probably is it for this week. Thank you, everybody, for your notes. Are there any other
I pulled this up earlier when a caller came in, but again, on December 13th, this is when ROH is running Final Battle, and that same night is this Warrior Wrestling card that's on Fight TV. So this is the card that they have. Brian Cage against El Phantasmo, Minoru Suzuki versus Filthy Tom Lawler. Then we have the Rascals from Impact taking on Will Ospreay, Amazing Red, and Rocky Romero. Lance Archer versus Brian Pillman Jr., Michael Elgin versus Sam Adonis, and then they have more matches on the undercard, including Jake Atlas and Holly Dead. Anyway, that's a really stacked card. For Fight TV,
it's a great looking card
with Will Ospreay, with Minoru Suzuki.
Is Jake Atlas, isn't he signed?
He is expected to be going to WWE.
But not just yet.
He starts, I believe, in the new year, so he's still finishing up dates.
That's a great look at Joe.
And I wanted to make one mention too about, we were talking about AEW contracts, and obviously different contracts are it's not all going to be similar, but Orange Cassidy is doing a show on Fight TV. So obviously there are some deals there where guys can do stuff that is going to be broadcast. So anyway, something to look into in the future. Also, referee Jessica Carr from NXT, she is moving to SmackDown. They gave her this nice send-off after NXT went off the air. She was the referee for the main event. So that was one other news item. But I think that's about it. So I want to I didn't think we'd get all those calls today, but man, we were just loaded. That was the whole show was calls.
Cafe's full. At all times, everybody.
We don't shut down for Thanksgiving.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us, whether it be on YouTube with the new look or also on our audio podcast. I wanted to make one final mention for now that we have a sale going on at store.postwrestling.com. 25% off everything with the checkout code
Scott Pilgrim.
That's right.
Yes. 25% off everything from now until Monday night at midnight. So go check out store.postwrestling.com. We've got some cool items up there that you can check out. I recommend the toques.
Yes. And as well, if you're expecting ratings for NXT and AEW, that might be due later on this week, if not Monday.
Yeah. I don't know if they'll be out Friday or not. So we will, once they're out, we'll have a report up, but not on Thursday. So you can just sit back and guess and figure out.
So thank you to the chat room. Thank you to everybody who called in.
Yeah, a lot of great calls today. Thank you to all of you for making us a part of your Thanksgiving if you were in the U.S. or just a part of your Thursday worldwide. Wai and I are going to be back on Friday night with Rewind to SmackDown. That will be out for all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe. You can check that out, postwrestlingcafe.com. The British Wrestling Experience drops Friday morning. Jamesy and Martin Bushby, they're going to chat about the British J-Cup from this past weekend at York Hall, IPW UK and their status, as well as all the latest news, NXT UK takeover announcement for January, and all of the stuff going on in the European scene. So check them out, two of the very best out there. And then Sunday, Thunderstruck with WH Park and Dylan Fox chatting Jushin Thunder Liger, El Samurai from April of 1992. That is this weekend's match for Thunderstruck.
And then on Monday, Tuesday, we have an edition of Rewind Away covering Royal Rumble 2000.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun show to go back and review. It's the Royal Rumble 2000. That will be out for Cafe members, headlined by the Street Fight with Triple H and Cactus Jack. We had
Dudley's versus Hardys
in a tables match. The debut of Taz. Maybe a not so memorable Royal Rumble. We're going to discuss it all from Madison Square Garden, January 23rd, 2000. So look out for that Tuesday for all members of the Cafe. For Wai Ting, I am John Pollock. Thank you again for tuning in to the Café Hangout.